Hi guys, so I'm here with Morenike Ayo Vaughan, and I'm going to start with a brief introduction. So she's a program officer at for advancing health equity at the Commonwealth Fund. She served as a senior manager at Avalier Health. She's been serving healthcare clients seeking the advancement of health equity and improvement in patient access to optimal care. So, hi, is there
Hi,
anything
Issa.
else you'd want to add to that introduction?
Oh, that was perfect. Thank you, Issa. I'm just happy to be here.
Perfect. So, I kind of want to start with some basic questions, if that's okay. So, do you want to tell me a little bit, maybe about your journey, maybe what got you interested in health equity, a general description?
Absolutely. So, I guess I'll start with the typical answer of in undergrad, I studied public health. That was by accident. I was actually originally a biochemistry major, and I was interested in
Mm.
pre-pharmacy and going to pharmacy school. And I ran into a pharmacist who was like, "You are not a good fit for pharmacy school. I don't see you working in a lab. You are so not a biochem major." So when my counselor told me I had to take organic chemistry three, I was like, nope, this is not for me. But I knew I wanted to be in healthcare, and I knew that I was still interested in health, and I learned about public health, and the rest is history. A large part about public health is achieving health equity, because part of public health is ensuring that the public has access to care, and the public is well protected from diseases. And so a lot of public health principles are aligned with equity centered principles. So studying public health opened the door for me to be working within health equity.
Perfect. And would you say that you started in health equity more as like a practical thing and maybe like the passion for it came later, or like how would you say that kind of like happened?
I would say I it just was part of my job.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the passion is now is high,
Yeah.
is more intense now because I'm older and I have more experience in the field. So I
Mm.
feel I'm more I'm more in control as to the projects that I engage. But when I was at Avalier Health and even now with the Commonwealth Fund, a lot of my job just includes consideration of how others are affected by healthcare
Mm-hmm.
access. So it was more a practical path because, like I said, it's part of a public health curriculum, and so it's just part of working in the field.
Of course. I think that's important though, because like you can say that you're really like passionate about something, but if you just have that passion and you don't think about the practicality, then you can go down that certain path and maybe you don't have as much success as if you started with something maybe more practical for what your strengths are in or what you're majoring in. And then maybe like you can incorporate some of your passion into what you're doing. So I think that's really
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, like I said, I was a biochemistry major before because I thought it was super practical. I was like, biochemist, pharmacist, duh. And after speaking to people, I was thinking I'm not a good fit for that, but I can still find a way to be involved in healthcare. And so I ended up, so you're right, I still didn't like chase passion per se, but I found a better fit that allows me develop passion, but while still allowing me to be very practical.
perfect. So, you currently serve as a program officer advancing health equity at the Commonwealth Fund. Could you please talk a little more about like what that work entails, what you do maybe on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. So it's a great job. It's not, it's not necessarily entry level. It's a job that requires prior experience. But essentially, what I do is um, I develop and execute strategy for our program. So let me speak in layman's terms. So typically, with foundations, philanthropies, they have a mission. They have an overall mission. Ours is to ensure the development of a high performing health system. So that is the mission of the Commonwealth Fund. Our program's specific mission is to eliminate inequities within healthcare. So that is our goal as our program. So we are a program because there are funds set aside to achieve that goal. So a big part of my job as a program officer is I have to figure out how best we allocate those funds and we spend those funds to achieve our goal. And so my job on there's no day to day that's the same, but the overall essence of my job is I'm usually collaborating or meeting with new stakeholders to learn about their projects and to
Mhm.
see whether or not their goals align with our goal. And when they
Mm,
do align, so for example, if there's someone that's looking to, for example, do a research project that's highlighting inequities in accessing care in a region that aligns with our goals to eliminate inequities. So I'll fund it. So my day to day for that task would look like talking to the researcher, aligning on what deliverables look like, talking through what are the policy opportunities, meaning when we get the results of this research, who are the policymakers that need to know about this work? And then when they are done with when they do the research and they publish, part of my job is thinking through who needs to get this document, who needs to read this, and how do we make sure that it leads to more policy changes. So that's a bit of my day, but the day to day changes. I mean, today I was reading a paper, tomorrow I'll be writing a paper, the day after I'll probably be reading a proposal. So it varies.
wow, thank you.
Absolutely.
So in terms of like kind of talking about the health equity landscape, how would you say that's maybe like changed from, let's say, like 20 years ago to now, and maybe kind of connecting that to like diversity in the sciences? Like how would you say that's like changed, and what advice would you give maybe to like people who, or like how would you describe the health equity landscape and just diversity in the sciences in general today versus like 20 years ago?
I think it's fluctuated. I think
Mm-hmm.
20 years ago, we learned there aren't, especially when we look at providers, there isn't a lot of diversity with providers, especially when we look at medical doctors. It's overwhelmingly white, it's overwhelmingly
Mm,
male. So it's gone up and it's gone down. Currently, the research does show the numbers have not really shifted much. It's still
mm,
the healthcare space is still largely not diverse enough, especially with medical doctors and the likes. It's not as diverse as it needs to be. However, in terms of the health equity landscape, I would say due to the pandemic, the COVID inequities and social justice movements from 2020, there is increased attention in the
mm,
landscape. It's now more normal to highlight health equity as an important part of health care discussions. Previously, health equity was not necessarily centered, and now it is. So that's where we are today. Is we're seeing more receptivity to, or rather, yeah, more reception of people paying more attention to needing to achieve health equity as part of a healthcare mission, a healthcare organization's mission.
I see. Thank you. So kind of switching gears a little bit to back to high school and kind of like college. So I wanted to ask, what did you have any specific like actions, or maybe not even actions, just like habits you had in high school or college or starting in your professional life to succeed academically or professionally?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I mean, there's the typical like studying. I'm a morning riser, so I used to do a lot of my studying like 5 a.m. to 7 a.m.
Wow.
I know
Mm-hmm.
it's super early, but I'm a big believer. I'm a big believer in getting up early because especially these days with social media, there's a lot of activity that goes on your phone once you get up. But when you wake up 5 a.m., no one's texting you, there are no notifications. So you can really, and then there's just no one to text. So you can like
Right.
not be distracted. So I'm really, really big on waking up early. And then the second thing is in college, I had a really strong regimen, meaning like I made
Mm,
myself a schedule. One thing about college is you do get a lot of free time in between classes to do whatever you want. And
mm-hmm.
oftentimes that can get scary because you may
Mm,
not focus on your goals. And then what happens is
yeah.
during finals, everyone's freaking out. So I had a pretty strict, not strict, but I had a routine. So I had a workout
Uh,
routine. So I would wake up really early. I would study and do my reading for the day. Then I would work out. Then I would meal prep. And then I budgeted like my hangout time. Like I knew in between classes, I want to hang out at the cafeteria with my crew. And then I
hmm.
would I would put in like 1 more hour of study time. And then one very important thing that you can learn in high school, you can learn as a freshman in college is the importance of networking. So how did I find out that
Mm,
I'm not going to be good at pharmacy? Pharmacy is I went to Rite Aid and I happened to talk to the pharmacist and he was nice. And I was like, oh my God, I think you want to be a pharmacist. And he was like, no, you would suck. I was like, why'd you say that? It was like, I stay
mm,
behind the window and I count pills all day. I definitely don't see you doing that. And he was a stranger and he was the first person to open my eyes. And then from then on, I would talk to anyone who was a little bit older than me. I would
Wow.
just say, hey, I'm a freshman and I'm thinking about this. And then people, that's how I found out about public health. I kept talking to people about it. And one day, one girl was like, I'm doing public health. You should check it out. And I talked to my
Hmm.
counselor. So I would say having a routine and networking super early and telling everyone what you want to do. Everyone loves students. So everyone loves to give advice and it's free as a student. When you get older, no one wants to give you advice because they're like, who's this adult? But when, when you're in college, when you're, straight out of high school, everyone wants to give you advice. So just tell everyone what your goals are very early. And then, um, you get help, without you even realizing.
Perfect. So kind of like as you were saying networking is very important, like mentorship, like probably
Yes.
if you hadn't talked to that like pharmacist, you might have gone on with the like biochemistry, something you wouldn't have really
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, like as you were saying, you would recommend just like networking naturally, maybe through like emails and classes versus because I know that there could be like maybe other ways for like maybe like programs, initiatives, but would you say that maybe that's going too far? Maybe like college students, high school students can just,
I would say organically. In college
yeah.
you get an advisor. That's what they're called. You get an
Ah.
advisor who advises you on what classes to take. I would use them, and then
Mm.
the thing is, you want to be authentic because people use the word networking, but networking just really means making new friends, but new productive like friends that can help you get to certain things. So sometimes they're your peers. Like sometimes some of your friends know about internships you don't know about. So
Mm-hmm.
it's organic. Like anytime you connect with someone,
Mm.
just bring it up. Like if you have a mission, like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what I want to major in. Someone might share with you, oh, this is how I made the decision. Anywhere you are, like it could be at the coffee shop, it could be anywhere, but whenever you connect with anyone on a human level, don't be afraid to share what some of your aspirations are.
Right. Thank you so much. So kind of like related to that, but kind of going into field work. So like initially like getting into field work and internships, maybe as a high school student or a college student, how important would you say that is? And could you tell us a little about your experience getting into certain field work and just internships?
Absolutely. It's never too early. It's never too early. And the first thing I'll say is, your first job is not going to be cute. Um, the first semi-real job I got, as a freshman, I was handing out flyers for a jewelry store. It was not fun. Like I had to hand out, it wasn't just flyers. It was like a sample for the
Oh
jewelry,
no.
and people would hate it. They would like take the paper and they would just throw it out. But I needed the $8 an
No.
hour. I mean, I was like, I need money. And then I was complaining to a new friend on campus one day. I was like, oh my goodness, I hate this job. And one day she was like, oh, Temple University Hospital hires student workers to do random things. And I was like, you know what? It's better than being outside. So I signed up, but like I got the gig. It was just a student worker job. And my job was literally to refile charts. At the time, they would use paper,
Mm.
like paper medical records. My job was to alphabetize it. Like the doctor's secretaries would give you like 200 charts, and you had to alphabetize it and then put it in the chart room. Mundane, right? Like
No,
I'm a
painful.
freshman studying biochemistry. Why am I doing this? But you know what? It paid. It was indoors. And then eventually they were um they were transitioning from paper records to electronic records. But guess what? I was the only one, because part of filing the records was you would get a stack of papers and you had to file them in. Well, when they needed someone to scan pulmonary function tests, sleep apnea results, it turns out that 19-year-old freshman girl that does the chart, she's the only one that actually knows how to do that. So that's how I got exposure into healthcare administration.
Wow.
That's how I learned that's why I learned about the big world of electronic medical records. It's a big deal because it's how doctors get access to your medical record. Like, how else will a doctor know what's going on if he doesn't know what you've had in the past, right? And I didn't realize at the
Mm.
time that this was a really, really big like thing to know how to do. Well, fast forward years later, like now in my job, part of our goal is to we have an objective called enhancing delivery systems. And part of that is electronic medical records.
Wow.
So, I mean, I didn't know it at the time. This was at this point 14 years ago. I was like, I'm just trying to file records and listen to my music. And then it turns out that what I learned years ago set me up to be here. So I say all that to say, I got in the field, not even being in the field. But that's what I say, keep talking to people. And you, even if you get a very mundane gig like being a greeter or just being a volunteer reading to seniors, anything that gets you around where you're trying to go. If you're
Mm-hmm.
diligent, if you're super good, if people like you, if people are invested in your success, eventually you'll get
Mm-hmm.
put in the right spot. But you have to earn your time, and you can't go into it thinking, I'm all that, so I'm just entitled to it. Sometimes you have to do the work that you think is beneath you before you end up
Of
super close to
course.
what you deserve.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like even if you're just like you were saying, like simple is like bringing the coffee or anything like that. Just
Yes.
like any mundane task, you're like surrounded by this environment. Maybe like you're absorbing it, people are seeing you and just like
Yes.
doing the
Yes.
job. You're kind of yeah.
Yeah, like the coffee thing may be small. I know a lot of people love to use that as an example of interns, but honestly, it is very impressive. An intern that can remember little details like, oh, I remember you like oat milk and you like 2 pumps of venti. You get more responsibilities. Like, oh, you paid attention to that detail. Okay, I want you to come with me to this networking event. Okay, I thought about you. I want you to
Mm,
go and place with me. Just, I think the main thing I will say is any opportunity to demonstrate competency, any opportunity for you to prove that you are a very smart
mm,
and driven person, no matter how small it is, it resonates with people. Like when young interns do something that shows like, oh my goodness, she's super smart, they get way more responsibilities, and eventually next thing you know, they're rock stars. It's like, oh, I don't even remember. I mean, I'll give another example. One of my internships out of while I was in grad school, I was an operations intern. I wanted to be a performance intern, but for some reason, I
mm.
think that they had like too many. But I was like, you know what? I'll take operations. What does an operations intern do? They order lunch every week and then they make sure the supply closet is. And I was in grad school at the point, so I'm thinking, I am 23 years old. But
No.
I did it so well that one day I organized lunch for this new VP, and he really liked it. And I was telling him how like I had a chart of our favorite food places, and I knew what people liked. So one day he was like, "Okay, Morenike, I have this big task. You know, do you think you can handle it?" And I ended up being a performance. I ended up doing such a good job as an intern that when I was leaving, the HR department told me not to put intern on my resume. They were like, just put associate because what you did doesn't even align.
Wow.
They were like, she was like, I don't want them thinking we just give interns important work. Like you did important work, so therefore you were an associate, not just an intern. So again, no matter how simple the task is, make sure you do it really, really well so that they understand
Yes.
that you really want to be there.
Yes, making the most out of every opportunity, then they'll give you more, as you were saying.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, thank you. And did any of these maybe like intern kind of like opportunities where you kind of like proved yourself, did that lead you to Commonwealth in any way? Did that?
Kind of. So for this particular intern, I knew I wasn't going to necessarily work there. I always knew that the purpose of this internship was to get my
Uh-huh.
next job at Avalier.
Uh-huh.
I knew I wanted to be a healthcare consultant from undergrad, and so
Uh-huh.
I picked an organization that I knew the experience there would be. And funny enough, again, I blabbed to everyone about my life goal, and two of the two folks that worked at that organization, one of them was like, "Oh, what's it called, intramural league, this league I'm on for softball, one guy
No.
works at that organization, should I set you guys up?" And the guy ended up referring me to Avalier. So again,
No.
you never know. Like, I mean, he liked me because I did a good job and I got the lunches right. And so when he met this person, he was like, "Oh, I know someone that's really interested in Avalier." Like, so again, being really kind, being super diligent and open. Like, tell everyone where you want to work, what you want to do, and eventually the right person's gonna say, "Oh my goodness, okay, I remember this person said this. So let me try and help."
Perfect. That's crazy. It's like the most random connections, but just like do those small habits, just like,
Yes,
wow.
yes,
That's so amazing. Thank you for that.
of
So,
course.
kind of switching gears a little bit, talking about maybe like resumes and stuff like that. What I know you kind of talked about this a little bit like in your internships, like being motivated, hardworking, kind of like doing every job well. But what other maybe like skills or qualities do you think make students or like young professionals stand out when they're like maybe on their resume when they're going to get hired? Like for example, if you were going to hire someone, like what would you be looking for if you were going to take in a student for an internship? Like what would
Mm.
you be looking for?
Leadership positions, clear explanation of leadership positions. So I like to see things like if someone tells me um they were like external affairs representative for their student club, I want to see things like organize 5 rallies focused on XYZ
Wow. Uh-huh.
topics. If someone tells me that they were the treasurer for again one of their student organizations, I want to see something like created 6 databases to blah blah blah. It's really all about demonstrating that if I give you a task, I don't have to worry about you. You know how to
Mm,
figure it out. So
mm-hmm.
that's what's important. I mean, young students don't have concrete responsibilities. They're young. They didn't like
Mm-hmm.
run a company. But does this person have capacity to handle a task? Can they lead a task? Like if I give them something, can they figure it out? And if they don't know the answer, do they know how to find the answer? Do they know how to ask the right questions? It's all about problem solving. So on a resume, we seasoned um, hiring managers, we understand that, in terms of the position, it's not going to be high. It's always going to be entry. But it's a matter of on this resume, is there something critical? Have they been given really important responsibilities and they executed it well? That's really what people want to see.
Perfect. Is there anything, maybe if you're receiving like an email or again with like the resume, like if you see something, then you're like maybe the resume or the email could be perfect, but then you're like, you see something and you're like, no, like
Ooh, that's a good one. Typos
typos.
are really big because, again, we don't expect too much experience, but whoa, basic reading, we have to get the basic
Mm-hmm.
reading down. Secondly, it's little things like thank you notes are super important. No matter what, if anyone speaks to you, it's very important. So courtesy. So we also look out for courtesy. Um, Third, I would say is a good structured email. Just knowing how to say good afternoon. My name is XYZ. I'm looking like, your introduction email was perfect. So, maybe share your template, but just good introduction, clear mission. Like, why are you emailing?
Mm-hmm.
Contact signature. So just basics of communication, but executing it well, proofreading and presenting yourself in a very eager and professional manner.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Of
So
course.
kind of switching to a more well, not random question. It's still relevant, but it's a bit different. So when you think of the word successful, what does that mean to you? And maybe is there maybe like one person you would think about? You could give an example that you would think of as successful.
Wow. Success. It's a really good existential crisis. I mean, question. I think, I mean, it's both a crisis and a question, but
Mm.
successful, I think it's really a matter of when you set out to do something, do people remember that you did it well?
Mm.
And I think part of a big part of success is integrity for yourself and integrity for your work. So I mean, this is not to sound pompous, but I consider myself successful, not because other people may tell me, but because I know the goals I set out to accomplish. And then it's not just that I accomplished them, I also know the hard work to put in to get there. So for me, because I think of the diligence and the integrity with which I did it, I feel successful. I'm like, I really put in the
Mm.
work and I
Mm.
got and I did it while treating people kindly because to get there, I needed help. So I'll give 2 examples. When I was in undergrad, again, I had a regimen with undergrad, as I said. So while I was in undergrad, I knew that I wanted to go to grad school right after, but I also knew the job I wanted right after. I Googled good jobs with public health. It said healthcare consulting. Then I looked up different things in healthcare consulting. So I was like, okay, I don't want to be traveling. I don't want to do that type of consulting. I need to do the consulting where you don't travel. and I found Avalier. This was when I was an undergrad. I was like, you know what? I'm going to work at Avalier when I'm done grad school. So at this point, this is like a 3 year plan. I think I was a junior. So I was like, in 3 years, I need to be at this. So I set that goal. I was like, I'm going to go to grad school. I'm going to do the internships. I'm going to end up at Avalier. Now, when I say the diligence, there is nobody I didn't network. I met so
Mm.
many people. It was so bad. There was one lady that I saw her on the bus, and I saw, oh my gosh, is that an Avalier bag? She goes, yeah, I work there. And I said, oh my gosh, I really want to work there. Can I email you? Long story, we actually ended up on the same team. She didn't even know. She was like, oh my god, you're the girl on the bus. I was like, yeah, but I mean, she never referred me, and that was okay. I didn't give up. I was like, I don't care. I'm gonna keep emailing, and I emailed until finally that one hiring manager took a chance, and he was like, who are you? And he spoke to me, and he liked my resume, and I came in, I interviewed, and I got the job. So that was like step one.
Wow.
Is I like so then while I was at Avalier, it's so crazy. It's good to I just had it in mind. Like after 2 years, I was like, you know what? I want to work for a nonprofit, and that's just what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do nonprofit. It's gonna be strategy. Like that's it. Like cool. And so while I was at Avalier, I was just doing my job, working hard. And my current boss, she was a client at Avalier. I was like, oh my gosh, okay, she's at the Commonwealth Fund. Cool. So I was like really diligent with her work. I worked really hard on it. And, we had really good rapport. And I did the project. And a year later, they reached out to me and they said, we have a position opened. You designed this. Do you want to
Mm.
work? So I consider it successful, not because I have the job, but because that's my story is no, I really put in a lot of strategy, strategic
Mm.
thinking, networking, perseverance, like diligence. Like I'm telling you, so many people at Avalier knew my name that when I got there, I was like, see, I got the job. Like surprise. So
Mhm.
so diligence is super important. And so that's why
Amazing.
I feel successful. Now, in terms of someone that I feel successful, I will say that my current boss,
Mm.
she's so humble. If she heard this, she would be like, oh my God. But she's very, very successful. And again, it's for those same reasons. It's not just because of the title she has or her education or the fact that she's a doctor or all these things. It's the fact that she's been super diligent and hardworking, and so every stripe that she has earned it. Like she's very qualified for the things that she speaks of. It's not just hype. She's as smart as she is given credit for. And on top of that, she's a great people manager. Like actually, I love her as a human being, and I consider
Mm.
her successful because now she has a legacy of that. Like there's a group of young women that look forward to her and say, wow, you've done so many wonderful things. We aspire to be like you. So I would say she's a great example of that to me.
Wow. And yeah, and all that success that you were talking about, like you were saying, comes from being strategic, from like, yeah, the opportunities, like networking with like anyone that you can. And also, like you were saying, like time management, like you said that you like a Google kind of like led to this as you were searching for like
Yeah.
jobs. I think that's very
Yeah.
important, especially like now,
Yeah.
because like obviously like tech is at a point right now where you can just like search anything on Google and you can get so many responses, like even like
Yeah.
artificial intelligence if you're using it like responsibly.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can you can get so much out of that and you can save time, which is also like something that high school students and like college students kind of like
Yeah.
might not have that much of.
And I want to add, it's not even a matter of having the answers. Part of the diligence is figuring out the answer. I didn't
Mm.
know that I wanted to do consulting. At this point, I was in my third year of public health as a major, and I had no idea what I wanted to like. I still didn't have a clue what I wanted to work in, but I set out time to look it up. I kept looking. It's not like I landed on consulting the first time. I found it. I looked up so many firms. I know all the firms. I looked up, okay, which one is specific to my culture, which one has
Mm.
diversity. It takes time. And so if you waste your time, you're not going to find it. So that's why I had a regimen is I need to figure it out. So,
Right, perfect. Thank you so much for that. I have
yeah.
another question. It's a little bit random, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. So, wait, actually, before I get to that one, I'm gonna ask you a more relevant one. So, how would you say failure has like maybe set you up for success?
Oh, I know it's a cliche sound or cliche, what's it called, phrase, but failure is redirection. Failure
Mm-hmm.
is really, you got to get back up. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I see myself as a bit of a fighter. Like if I get rejection or failure, it's like, God. And then that sucks. Getting back in. So
Mm.
I actually got I got one other job offer in consulting, and they ended up last minute taking the offer back. Like this is yeah, oh yeah.
Oh.
But I don't care. They called, the hiring manager called me. He's like, I'm so sorry. Like, the budget got cut. I was like, whatever. Back on Avalar's website because I gave up on Avalar. I was like, you know what? Back on the website. I'm supposed to be here. I'm gonna find someone. I've spoken to like 10 people. I don't care. I'm gonna speak to an 11th. Um, Second thing is failure is not personal. Very rarely do you cause your own failures. Some people do due to the lack of responsibility. Sometimes it's really just not your fault. Like, yes, you failed,
Mm-hmm.
but it was hard. It was really hard. It just was external. So
Mm.
I try not to I don't internalize it. Honestly, I don't. Like, I'll cry and be sad, but we're getting back up. We're getting back up because it also has to do with confidence. It's like no matter what happens, I'm still good and I'm still competent and I'm good at things. So I'm gonna
Mm.
go back and reroute. Like, okay, I'm gonna change this up. Like, this didn't work. Just because something doesn't work doesn't mean I didn't work. The two are separate. So those are my thoughts on failure. Is it hurts, but you keep going till you don't fail. So you keep trying
Mm.
until you don't. You just don't repeat the same mistakes. That's when it's a real failure. Is if you keep doing the same thing, don't do the same thing. Change it again until you get the right formula.
Right. And that has to do with having like a strong mentality, like you were saying, being confident in your abilities. Sometimes things are out of your control. Perfect.
Absolutely.
That's very valuable. Thank you.
You're
So
welcome.
now for the random question. So, what purchase of $100 or less have you made in the last 6 months that you think has like most impacted your life?
Oh my goodness, $100 or less. Okay, I really gotta think about this one. Should I check
It
my
can be
Amazon?
whatever. It can be like
hundred
what
dollars or
anything.
less. I know there's something. Let me just take 1 minute to think about it.
Hmm. No
One
problem.
$100 or less.
Yeah, I know it's a hard question.
That's a good question. Oh, okay. I just recently got into thermals for cold
Hmm.
temperatures. I
Hmm.
don't know why anyone didn't tell me about this. Like I could just layer on and I don't have to be cold. It's been life changing. I know it's super random, but I get cold very easily. Like it bothers me a lot. And we're in the dead of winter and I'm on the East Coast. So just thermals. It's been great. That's it. That's my purchase of $100 or less.
Perfect. And then, yeah, that just has to do with like practicality. Like, uh,
Absolutely.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. And finally, do you have any requests or asks of the audience?
I don't have any requests. I guess as a final closing, I think the best qualities to have as a young person who's figuring it out is just diligence, a lot of diligence, and being relatable. Those two will take you farther. You don't have to be the smartest person. You don't even have to be the most hardworking person. You don't have to be you don't have to be super privileged, but like if you're a people person and people like you and you're diligent, meaning you're good at what you're doing, like you work on being good, those two you can go far.
Right. And maybe like the fancy opportunities that people like glamorize so much, like I don't know, like programs that some people might pay like a bunch of money for, like
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
networking or things like that. Like you were saying, like you found people to network like on your bus. Like it's if
Yeah.
you're like
Oh yeah.
looking and you have your eyes open for the opportunities, like they're there and you don't need like all these like
Oh
money, fancy
yeah.
resources.
Yeah, I never used any programs. I just met like the
Yeah.
person who ended up hiring me at Avalair. I just messaged him. I had a friend who was connected to him on LinkedIn, and I messaged her. Excuse me. But you know what I said
Perfect.
about blabbing to everyone? I was blabbing to her. I was like, "This guy, I noticed you know him. I need to meet him. He's a hiring manager." First she was like, I don't know. He was kind of rude when I met him. I don't think he's gonna hire anyone. I was like, I don't care. I don't care. He ended up hiring me. So so yeah, you don't need fancy programs. I'm telling you, talk to anyone. You're young and you don't have a job. Talk to anyone at the coffee shop, at the pharmacy. If anyone takes a liking to you, blab about what you want to do. Someone will help.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're
It's been
welcome.
so nice asking you all these questions, and I think we got some really valuable insight. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.